Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Srinivas. Good morning.
Hey, Sudhir, morning.
క్వశ్చన్ ఒకటి మన
Mhm.
రికార్డింగ్ సెషన్స్ వీడియో జూమ్ లింక్ వీడియో రికార్డింగ్స్ ఎక్కడ ఉన్నాయి అంటే ఒకటి మెయిన్ది ఉంది మొన్న మొన్న వెనస్డే అది అయింది కదా అది ఎక్కడుంది వీడియో రికార్డింగ్
Everything should be there. Description లో ఉండాలా?
డిస్క్రిప్షన్లో అది లేదు అంటే నేను చూశాను
అవునా? ఓకే.
ఇదేమో యూట్యూబ్లో అప్లోడ్ చేసి ఒరిజినల్ది యూట్యూబ్లో అప్లోడ్ చేసి ఆ లింక్ ఉంది కానీ జూమ్ లింక్ లేదు
Zoom link. Zoom link is there. Okay. Everything goes into like YouTube uploads.
అయితే ఇది అప్లోడ్ కాలైతే నేను అందులోకి వెళ్తే విఎస్ఎఫ్లోకి వెళ్తే మొన్న వెనస్డే అయింది అక్కడ అప్లోడ్ అయ్యలేదు
అవునా? ఓకే. Wednesday there is no recording.
ఐ
Okay.
థాట్ ఇట్ వాస్ బీయింగ్ రికార్డెడ్
నో వెన్స్డే మేము రికార్డింగ్ ఎనేబుల్ చేయలేదు, అందుకోసం ఇట్ వాస్ నాట్ దేర్ మాట. సో
ఓకే బికాజ్
సాటర్డే.
నేను 5 minutes ఏమో లాగిన్ అయ్యాను 5-10 minutes అప్పుడు రికార్డింగ్ ఆన్ లో ఉంది
అవునా? వీ కెన్ చెక్ అవర్ క్లౌడ్ స్టోరేజ్. సో
ఓకే ఓకే
ఇఫ్ ఇట్ ఈస్ దేర్ వీ కెన్ అప్లోడ్. సో
యా
అట్లీస్ట్ ఐ రిమెంబర్ లైక్ వెన్ ఐ క్రియేటెడ్ ఐ ఫర్గాట్ టు ఎనేబుల్ బై
ఎందుకంటే
డిఫాల్ట్.
మెసేజ్ ఏం చెప్పారంటే వి విల్ బి రికార్డింగ్ ద వెనస్డే సెషన్ ఆల్సో అంటే
వి సెట్ ద మెసేజ్ బట్ వీ ఫర్గాట్ టు రికార్డ్. సో అందుకోసం ఈ సెషన్స్ కి బై డిఫాల్ట్ వీ ఎనేబుల్డ్ మాట రికార్డింగ్.
ఓకే 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 ఎందుకంటే నేను చూసిన అంటే నేను 10 minutes ఉన్నాను కానీ రికార్డింగ్ అంటే ఆ రోజు దివాళీ ముందు రోజు కదా సో
యా
సంథింగ్ సరే సరే థ్యాంక్ యూ
నో ప్రాబ్లం.
Hey guys, good morning.
హే సత్య.
Hey. Srini, I think మనము streamline చేయాలండి ఇది. I think we should ask everyone to use only one whatever.
ఇట్ ఈస్ ఓకే యాక్చువల్గా, రెండు చాలా
Okay
స్ట్రైట్
కాదండి.
ఫార్వర్డ్ గా ఉన్నాయి.
Luis will have a tough time, trust me.
No, actually, like I enabled both in my
I
local
enabled
environment.
3 of them. You enabled 2, I enabled 3 of them.
Yeah, it is very straightforward.
Sure. I mean, I'm fine. I'll follow
Yeah.
what Luis follows. If he's
Yeah.
if he's demoing on collab,
Yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
to collab.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I'll tell, okay, I hardly like get into the code level. Okay.
Yeah.
But if I'm able to like install these and make it working in
Uh-huh.
a straightforward step, I think like it should be very easy for all of you.
Yeah. నేను అంటాం ఏంటంటే లైక్ ఇట్స్ మోర్ ఫర్ ఇది కదా
Yeah.
స్ట్రీమ్ లైనింగ్ ద సో దట్ వి డోంట్ వేస్ట్ టైం.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why like if somebody is having a tough time
Mhm.
on setting up editor and local environment,
Mhm.
Colab is the right
That's
one.
fine.
It's
ఇంకొకటి
very
ఏంటంటే
straight.
ఈ ట్రైనింగ్స్ లో అంతా డెమోక్రటైజేషన్ ఇస్ నాట్ ఎ బిగ్ గుడ్ థింగ్, యూనో.
Right. I know.
Everyone
I
be
know.
on a
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
It makes your coach sorry it makes the life of the instructor easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, like if we run into issues this time,
Yeah.
so we'll switch to Colab. Colab is a straightforward. There's nothing you need to be done. Right.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
You open it, everything is there.
Right.
So what's the time? 8:01. Louis should be joining. Let me check. Okay, give a few minutes for Louis to join. Meanwhile, I'll check the recording started or not. Okay, recording already started. Nice. Hey, Louis.
Hello, everyone.
Hey. All right. So Saturday morning, right after Halloween and Diwali, we have already like 26 people. So awesome. So looks like everybody is excited. Hope everyone has like their environments ready. So Louis, before you joining, we were discussing. So if some people using local environment and some people using Colab, if it is becoming a challenge for you, if people running into different challenges, we'll decide on moving to like Colab. So, but we will today we will see whoever wants whichever environment they can use it, and accordingly we can streamline. Does that make sense, Louis?
Makes sense.
Okay. I think like we have good participation, 29 people now. Like let's get started.
Okay, so let me. So, need permissions to share my screen. There we go. All right. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining for today's class. Last week, we talked about the fundamentals, right, of how do LLMs work? How do we get into there? What are transformers? What is the whole process? And why prompting is such a big deal of inside LLMs, and how do we engage and work with it? So we talked about last week also, what are prompt engineers? What do they really do? You know that that you can simply just type and write something to an LLM, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. And there's different ways of getting the results you need and want. And that's where the difference between like a prompt engineer, I would say in quotations, versus simply just writing a message inside an LLM. And this is really part of this is like I really this is really point of it is to get success in your projects. As you start developing your own projects and you're not getting the results you want, it's not coming out the information you need. This is to really give you that base of what can you do to troubleshoot, what can you do to really get that better response. So let's go through some fundamentals today. So in order to engage with an LLM, you need to sort of create a prompt. So imagine it's pretty much a conversation what you're having with the robot or with the LLM that you're having. And it's just not a technical ability, but it changes how you interact with technology, right? So before, in order to interact with a bunch of data, you would have to write in a SQL table, SQL code, that you would have to write out and select certain tables from certain row with filter this, filter that in order to extract information. So now with LLMs, you're pretty much having a conversation. So it's similar like writing an email or creating content. It really depends on your style of how well you write an email, depends how well you can write a code to extract SQL, is really how you get better LLM responses. So the purpose of today's objective is to how to learn to effectively use these prompts in your workflow to obtain precise and valuable insights. And therefore you can enhance your productivity and get better results. So what is a prompt? So a prompt can be ranged from a simple question to maybe a series of complex tasks. So it could be a minor change you do in your prompt to get a different variation. Therefore, there isn't like a perfect response you can do every single time. It's always adjusting and tuning your response to your use case. A prompt usually contains one of these three elements. versus a role, an identity or perspective to an LLM to complete the task you're given. So example, act as a project manager. 2, a context. This is to really steer the model towards a better response. For example, you are leading a team that's developing a new mobile app and improving productivity for remote workers. So you have now giving a context of what it's trying to do and why is it trying to do it, right? And then you can ask it for specific tasks. Now that you know that you're developing a mobile app or something like that, or you're now doing project management, draft a project plan outlining the key milestones and deliverables for the app development project. So you're giving it the role, you're giving it the context, and you're giving it the instructions. Now, why are we doing this, and what's the purpose of doing this, and why do we need to have that? So if you remember, in the last reading, we had a little bit more discussions about why we have nodes, why we have transformers, why we have different aspects of this. And the reason why is because as you say certain words and say certain things, right? Remember the attention layer, this can identify many different things inside your hidden layer, right? So if you were to remove a hidden layer from a neural network, it just becomes a simple, straightforward network and doesn't really give you that complexity. But by having the hidden layer inside, you're going to go different nodes. So you'll see the word project manager, and from its training, will have all the information that a project manager does. So, and you'll say mobile app, it'll grab all the attention layers from the mobile app. So you're really trying to get the model to hit certain hidden layers inside its output to get a better response. I'm not really sure what the question about fine-tuning prompts will give different outputs. Well, maybe the question could be maybe rephrased in the sense that why changing the question will give better different outputs. And I think that's explained it just currently. The more words or more context you give to an LLM can hit certain nodes inside your LLM to give you better outputs to that. So if you make it very general, you'll get a very general response. If you make it very specific, you'll get a very specific response. And we'll go through a couple of ways to get into that, and we'll go through some examples. So thank you for asking. So here's some examples. You imagine you're a marketing specialist working on a campaign for a new product launch. Outline a strategy for social media promotions, focusing on engagement tactics and content scheduling. So first, it's your role. Imagine you are a marketing specialist. We identify what the role is for this LLM. What is the context? Working on a campaign for new product launch, and the instructions, what we're having here. So again, incorporating all these different things that it's hitting on. You can only and again, you don't need to do all three each time. Sometimes it can be simple. So I'm going to analyze this quarterly performance, blah, 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 blah. Most people just do an instruction-based prompt. But again, I just give you different examples of looking at what can you do for a role, what are the instructions, and what is the context, right? So imagine you're an experienced software engineer specializing in Java code optimization. So you're letting the model know it needs to hit the software engineer node. You're giving it nodes that needs to know what Java code is. You're telling it to need to have a code review checklist. So it's going and collecting all these top words that you're saying. And then when it's done, it's reflecting and make sure their code is clean, efficient, and follows best practices. So again, we're going in and asking it to be very specific, what it's looking for, hitting those nodes, and actually extract the information from the LLM. An example for this one is keep in mind that we have a tight deadline. All right, so I know there's some question about audio. Has everyone can hear me? Is it just Mahim or?
Yes, it's loud and clear.
Okay, good. So how can we really form and get the best way? So there's many different frameworks. So I'll be focusing on one called Create. And this is to really help you as you do your own, as you build your own case of what you really want to do, is Create. It will help you really define how your prompt is good. So what is Create? So create just an acronym for a helpful guide for crafting high quality prompts for AI tools. So first is character. Make sure your character aligns with the role, right? You need to define what the role is if you want it to play and its motive. So for the example I put on there, you want to act as a customer support agent, you are a software engineer, you're a manager of this, right? So again, what is the character that you're assigning it for it to be? Second is the request. The element has context, instructions found in basic prompts. You must tell the AI what the actions you want it to take, and be as detailed as possible, right? And that's the most important part for you to get the best results. So again, I want you to act as a customer support agent and please provide solutions for common issues faced by users when logging into their accounts. Common issues, and then you can put a list of issues there. Examples. This element shares similarities with other contexts. If you want to offer better results, you can apply different examples between this. We'll talk later on what those prompt shots are called, but for now, we'll just call those examples. And again, this is optional, but again, this is to help guide the response that you're looking for from an LLM. So I want you to act as a customer support agent. Please provide solutions. And use the following examples based on the specific scenarios. So here's the common issues, and here's an example of a scenario where that's happening. Next is we adjust. Adjustments is similar to a context and basic prompt. This is the point in which you may improve the prompt, ensuring that all critical aspects are included to get the best possible outcome. So again, when you get your response and you're not getting the best way you can get it, go back and adjust. You can go back and adjust your prompt to make sure it's coming out and understanding what's happening. Next is your type of output. You can say how you want the output to be, right? So if you want it to be structured, you want the styles, you want specific elements, you want it to be a JSON file, you want it to be bullet points, you want it to be how you want the model to respond, just to make sure that it's a type of output that you're looking for when you do this part. And last is your golden key, is the extra part. So this is where you might see things online where they say offered $1 million to do a better job. These AI chat models are designed to interact with humans, and they're pretty much trained on human feedback and for clarifications. So you can always praise a good response. You can say, thank you, the response was very well, but I want you to adjust this, right? Actually, I really didn't like the way you phrased it. Can you repeat this way in a certain way, right? So in that chat conversations, you're asking the model to go back and redo it, and it's actually trained to respond to this interaction. So again, the LM will hit certain nodes saying you're going feedback that way as well. So that's just an extra that you can do when you're interacting with your model. But this is just a part of the framework as you go on, you create your prompts. It'll go that way. Yes, there's a question in the chat asking about, do you have to add these things every single time? It really depends on how you create your model. If you're creating a chat bot, which you're having multiple interactions, you only have to do this once in creating a prompt, a system that will have this. And if you're just having one basic question, one at a time, then you'll have to do it every single time on your next file. So if you create a flow of saying, here's your system prompt, here's how I want it to answer and ask it, you just simply have to ask the question every single time. But if you're creating a chatbot flow, you don't have to, you just continue and have the same context in the memory. Okay. So next we'll talk about prompt parameters. So you discovered how to create a structured prompt, but sometimes your prompt, although correct and well structured, may not meet your expectations. And one way of doing this is adjusting prompt parameters. So let's learn how to adjust prompt parameters to affect the model's performance and make sure you can have greater accuracy and relevance. So what is prompt parameters? Let's say you have you're doing, let's say, a RAG, or you're trying to retrieve information from a bunch of documents, and you're saying, please tell me why, for example, let's say it's a car mechanic RAG, and you're saying, tell me how to do an oil change. And he says, most certainly, Lord Sauron, and welcome to the Lord of the Rings oil change part. And you're like, why is it acting like it's part of a book of Lord of the Rings, or why is it being extra fluffy, or things like that? And that really depends on how you can really you can adjust this either using prompts, and you can say, no, please be very specific as much as you can, and it's still giving that information. Then you need to go back and adjust your prompt parameters. So inside, when you talk with the model, there is certain parameters you can adjust, similar like fine-tuning a car or fine-tuning a radio. You can adjust certain knobs to get different responses. As you may have known, as many of those who have already used this, adjusting the temperature will focus on controlling randomness. So with higher values, such as 1, it'll be very random, and this is very good for creativity. So not all these parameters are bad, because if you are a marketing specialist and you want to create diverse context and great diverse stories, then you would turn that knob of temperature all the way up, which we'll talk about next, and you will have diversity and more ideas to generate new ideas. But if you put the temperature low, we'll talk about next, is then you'll have very focused responses, not as diverse as you're thinking. Next is your top P. This limits the choice with words with probabilities. So if we remember that in the attention layers and the nucleus in our transformers, there's different ways of how the model responds. It determines the probability of choosing certain words. Now, the probability of choosing words are sort of divided to 2 or 3 different types of metrics. So top P limits the choice of words, and top K restricts the most likely words. So again, adjusting how many words you want to be in your probability, adjusting the selections of most likely words will affect your model output as well. So if you want to limit to maybe the top only 2 choices, or top 5 choices, or top 10 choices versus top 20 or 30, your top P will help you with that. And also, if you want to restrict the most likely words, if you seeing it, if you want to keep the temperature diverse, but you want to also keep it with the most likely words towards that topic, you adjust the top K. That's a very good question. Is it adjusting the softmax OP? So yes, so it's whatever's influencing at that last part of, it's not adjusting anything inside the LLM. This is just adjusting the output. Now the max output tokens, it sets the maximum response. So if you have a limit of how much text can go out, and you can say, and you know that if you have more than 4,000 tokens a day, it's going to cost you so much, and you have to have certain cost restrictions in place. Max output tokens can help with that. If you want the answer, if you want your model to respond to be very short and concise, max output tokens will that. If you want to, if you just want to test out models as well to get shorter response times, max output tokens will help with that as well. So we'll go deeper just with temperature and max output tokens, as those are the most that you'll be playing with around. But again, for those who want to go deeper, there's different parameters than just these ones. There's top beams, different things like that you can really get into. But in terms of just the fundamentals, I will be focusing on 2 that will really help get the baseline in. So we talked about how temperature is very important in terms of doing creativity and randomness around the AI output. It's between 0 and 1. So if you want a neutral result, always keep the temperature around 0.5. So it really depends again on how creative you want your model to be. So when you have it on a lower scale, it'll be more focused and less creative. While you have it on a higher scale, you can get a higher creativity. So when would you use both? So use a lower, more focused scale when you need accurate, reliable information. Like I said before, if you're doing extraction of information from PDFs, if you're asking for technical definitions, if you're asking for to do certain codings, you really want it to be more focused. You don't want it to say, help me code a SQL output, and then it's picking up packages or making up functions that it doesn't have, right? So this is where you lower the temperature to get a better response. Now, if you're asking it, let's explore some ideas of how I can improve my SQL functions. This is where you can increase the temperature in your response to get a better response from there. So I put an example of, think of it as a temperature at a spicy level in a dish. Lower temperature produces more of a predictable, consistent flavor, while high temperature, extra spicy, leads to a more diverse and adventurous taste experience. So again, someone's asking about what's affected by the temperature. So again, just like we talked about before, it's only affecting the output at the end. So when we looked about the softmax layer, we talked about what's going to be done in the probability. When you go and ask the question at the last part, when you get all the predicted outputs, you're adjusting that last predicted outputs. I'm sorry, I passed one. Last one, I'll talk about for you, so for everyone to get deeper into more of the fundamentals is the max token. So the max determines the output of the AI's length. So remember we talked about tokens before as the number of words being able to that are able to respond. So you could say put in 20 tokens, but that could only equate to maybe 8 words or 9 words depending on your LLM model. So it's really depending on what's your max tokens from there. One thing you need to watch out for is that certain LLMs have max output tokens. Some could only output 8,000 in terms of tokens. Some can only output certain others. Right now, the LLMs are changing. There's different, as we showed before in the charts, there's different model outputs you're putting in. So just be careful of how much output your model that you're playing with can do. Do a little research on your model of what depends on your use case is. So if you are thinking of creating articles, creating stories, helping it to create a book, there's only a certain max amount of number of outputs. So I don't know if you guys have been playing with ChatGPT or you're playing with Claude or different models, and you ask it to summarize, and you give it like maybe 2 pages of blocks of codes, and then when it finishes generates, it only generates half of it, and you're like, well, like, why did it stop? Please continue, and you're telling the model to respond, and it continues. It's only because there is a max number of tokens it can output at a certain amount of time. So when you develop your own use cases, when you're developing your own models, it really depends on how you really want your models to respond. So again, when would you have a lower max tokens? This will be when you have brief and direct questions for short answers or summaries. If you only want short summaries, you can always set the max tokens to be that level. Also, the higher max tokens, and when you have higher tokens than that, your response will be longer and detailed, beneficial for explanation descriptions. You get an in-depth analysis, storytelling, or instructions. So there's some questions in the chat. I know we have some time, so I can quickly ask them. So max tokens, what exactly does it mean by use the required value instead of the variable number? So when you're looking at max tokens, you don't want to put in the prompt and say, only tell me 400 words. It could or could not do it for you. Because remember, LLMs are very non-deterministic. So when we look in the code, that when you actually create your chatbot design and you're creating your parameters, there is a function of saying how much tokens will be able to give out. And that's actually that's deterministic number versus just telling inside the prompt, only give me 10 words. And that's what we mean by this. When I said please continue, this is when you're developing with a chatbot and say ChatGPT, and you already hit your max 8,000 tokens and only gives you half your article. You can tell the model to continue, which means to extend the output of the other half that it's missing. So it will not do the first half that you did, but it will continue doing from the bottom half that it missed. But you need to be very specific in your prompt. If you tell it, no, you didn't give me the whole information, and the model will say, okay, I'm sorry, I'll try again. And it'll start from the beginning, and then you'll miss the second half again. So you have to be very specific and say, please continue where you left off. So then it can give you that second half of output that it can give out. So even if you ask it to please continue, it won't be able to overpass the max amount of tokens it has. Do the models expose what a token mean? For yes, so the model itself won't give you how much tokens it can give out. If you're working with OpenAI, ChatGPT, there is pages online that you can look up and see what are the max tokens for each model. And I remember we shared a couple metrics last time of what are the max inputs and outputs for each token. So each model is different as you continue doing this. If you remember from the first slide, we had a quiz about which model has the highest input token. Right now, Gemini has Gemini Pro 1.5 has up to a 1 million context window. I think it's working on 2 million context window. 1 million context window, for example, it can ingest the whole book of Harry Potter. So again, for those who are working with different LLMs, just know that each one has its own strengths. One might be smarter in the sense that it's portraying better, and versus other ones can take better context to give you better summaries. No, max tokens will not always produce a better result. It's only to tell you how like it's pretty much saying how do you want your response to be structured? Do you want it to be structured concisely, or do you want it to have more explanations or descriptions? And that's really dependent on your use case. So just keep in mind that very low max token values may lead to incomplete or nonsensical output. So this is where you may have to be very careful. If you're not answering a simple yes, no questions, or you're not asking for short, concise questions, and you're actually looking for like a paragraph and you're telling max tokens, fit 30 tokens, it might actually cut off the paragraph because you're asking for a paragraph and you're restricting it to only 10 words. So again, you have to be very careful from this. Where this would make most sense is if you are making an LLM do logical processes. I want you to do this and I want you to do that. So guys, I'm just going to quickly go through a couple more because we have coding that I really want to get through today. So we might not get through all the code books that we'll go through today. Maybe we'll go through one or two during the second half, and then we'll continue the next class for that. So again, the whole point of this is make sure everyone understands what's really important when you start building out these models, because when you work on your own CAPEX model, we'll talk about near the end of class, of what kind of design you're thinking you want to do. This is really important to frame out, because if you're creating agents, you're creating RAGs, you need to understand how to adjust them and get a better response. So we talked about prompt components, we talked about frameworks, we talked about basic parameters. So let's talk about what is really that tuning cycle. So let's say you've gone in there, changed the adjustments. There's different things we can check out to check out our model's performance. So here's what I call the prompt cycle. So come out with your idea of what you're looking for your model to do, generate the prompt of how you're doing this prompt, output the evaluation towards the request, and then check and then do the adjustments that you're having, and then output the evaluation towards the task. So let's say you have an idea of you wanted to give you ingredients. Let's say you're doing a RAG. You wanted to prompt out to give you a good cooking instructions, right? For let's say for butter chicken. So the idea is you want the model to give you butter chicken instructions. So you create your prompt, say, please give me just the ingredients for butter chicken, and I want you to give it to me in a very simple manner. It outputs your request. Maybe because you didn't say that, maybe that you're a chef and you want exact ingredients. Maybe because you didn't write that you'll be cooking with an oven. Maybe you weren't specific in requesting that you only had certain ingredients with you. It's not giving you're evaluating and saying this is good, but it's giving me a response, and the response is good. It's responding to me, but in the output evaluation toward the task, it's not really giving me everything I'm looking for, because I need specifics because I'm cooking with this, or I don't have this ingredient, or I don't have the other. And you have to go back to the prompt and redo the adjustments until you're focused into really what specifics you're looking towards. So here's an idea. So you need to write a message about the importance of reducing plastic usage for Earth Day. So step one, you decide that request. 2, write a message emphasizing why reducing plastic is crucial for climate change. See the output, look at the response. Is it good? Is it not good? Evaluate it, and then you go forward, right? So again, this is just an example. I won't read it through because of time, but this is just different ways that you can think of evaluating your responses and rephrasing it. So how can you evaluate your response? There's different ways. And again, I'm doing this because it's very, in a business aspect, some things are very restrictive of how your responses should be. If you're doing this more for fun, again, maybe these things aren't as restrictive that you need to be. But again, I'm going to give you more of a business context if you want to try it in a business area. So this is why we're going through these different steps of evaluations. So again, check at the relevance of making sure it's responsive. Check at the accuracy. So remember, if the model isn't trained on a certain thing and you ask it to say the output information, if it's not trained on it, it will try to respond to you. The model is not trained to say, I'm sorry, I don't know that information. It's trained to find a way to respond to your question using the most likely tokens. Completeness, make sure it's covering all the aspects that you're looking for. If you're asking for ingredients, how to cook something, and it stops right before you're cooking, right before the cooking instructions, make sure you tell it, please evaluate and give me the cooking instructions. Coherence, grammatical, and again, bias, but we'll talk about bias later on. So if your output doesn't meet any of the requirements, this is a time to reshape your idea and start a new cycle of the process. So in the end, you're adjusting it, you're telling it this, telling that, and you're still not getting that response. Go back and think of a new way of changing or rephrasing your prompt. So there's different ways of doing this. So there's a very good question. I'll respond really quickly. Can we ask it if it's hallucinating or not from the data? So they won't know if it's trained on, and it'll say it very confidently too. You could say, who walked on Mars? Neil Armstrong. Are you sure it's Neil Armstrong? Yes, I'm sure. No, it was Bill Gates. I'm sorry, it was Bill Gates. Because the model is just trained on what it has, and it will, if it doesn't have this information, it will say it in the most confident manner as well. So just be careful of this. So there's a question about SHOT. This is SHOT-based prompting techniques. This is to help the model understand how you want it to answer and how to really get it to more shape to what you want. So zero-shot prompting is simply not give it any examples and just go, right? So the examples, so the advantage of it is give me the cooking instructions of butter chicken. Okay, here's the instructions. Da 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 da. That's it. A few shot prompting would be, here's a cookbook that gives you descriptions, measuring cups, it gives you this and this the other, tells you all the instructions of how to cook, let's say another food, let's say lasagna. Now use the exact same way of cooking lasagna, and you the same way, I want you to show me instructions how to do butter chicken. So this is an example of a few shot prompt where you're giving an example of how you want it to be labeled as, and you're giving it the examples of how you want the response to be. So let's say you do this and it's giving out all these different promptings, and you're like, okay, but I want it, so it's going good, but now let's say you have something more difficult to ask. Let's say you want it to be a math tutor. Sorry, before jumping on, there's a good question of how do we validate information? So again, when you're asking it questions and you're asking information, you need to fact check it. There's really no other way to fact check an LLM right now other than using another LLM. You could use different ways, LLM as a judge. You can use another LLM to judge it that you know that has knowledge of doing things. Or two, you can copy and paste it into a fact checker, copy and paste and see if there's anything that you feel that is not right. So there was a good question on the last question. What's a good use case for zero shot versus few shot? So I have it in here. So and the use case is ideal for initial exploration of a task. So understanding the model's capabilities. And then versus few shot is essential for specific structure or style needs. So again, I didn't go through all the information because there's a lot of information on here, but please take your time to go through the slides. They have the different use cases in there. And again, I'm just touching on the base points to make sure that we're all on the same page, but they're really good questions. And so, yep, so there's a very good question. So sometimes a brag is not even needed if it's a very simple, if it's a very small document, maybe let's say less than 400 words, you should give it to the model to learn about that. But we'll talk about that later. And also there is a max tokens you can give it as input to the model. If you remember in the last first class, there's a max tokens for input and there's max tokens for output as well. And each one has a separate cost if you're doing through an API. So there is actually more ways to make the model smarter. As you could tell, the model will answer questions as best as it can, but models can actually go through sequential thinking and do some logical, deep thinking understanding. And how we can do that is through two different techniques. And these are not all exhaustive, all the different techniques there are, but I'll go through two famous ones. And it's called chain of thought, or called COT, which is where you can tell the model to break down its reasoning and a step-by-step to arrive at the answer. And prompt training is to change the response to certain smaller tasks for it to understand. So let's go through each one. So chain of thought. So LLMs are good at finding patterns and massive amount of data, but often struggle with reasoning tasks. They might not find the right answer by choice, and because they might understand the logic or understand how the world works, right? So chain of thought provides a more systematically logical way to structure the model, helps articulate the thought process, and helps you get more of that response answers for multi-reasoning. So here's some pros and cons of each one. So using chain of thought, the model will arrive at a correct, thorough answer by breaking down the reasoning process. It provides clear steps and explanations and help you to identify if there's anything debugging that needs to be done. So what's really the cons of this? Increased size and output. So it will hit the API once to do the first chain of thought. And I will go again and say, okay, I need to reason again. And we'll hit your API again and have another cost, and compounding the first chain of thought to your second one and compounding to your third one. So if you have a lot of input, let's say you have over 3 pages of input, it will say, I need to first deduce what's happening. And we'll use all that input and say, okay, here's my summary of that. And then it'll go to the next part and say, okay, what's trying to say? So as you're going through each step, it will increase the output, increase the input size each time to understand what's happening. So that's different ways of doing this. So good question. If we approach chain of thought, LLMs can fail to produce output if this is not trained to arrive explainarily. So it will arrive to an output, but it may not be as it may not be the way you want it to be. So this is really how you define your prompt. So how I say it is, it's definitely an art. And it's definitely, this is where you could say, hey, I tried to do a chain of thought, and the model wasn't able to produce the output. But someone could come in and say, step 1, do the initial term, step 2, do this, step 3, do this, and get the final answer. And you're like, what? I try to do that. But because you're breaking it, they're just trying to give it the model in different ways to adjust and ask questions. You can actually, it really depends on how well you prompt and how you can get that out. Like I said, it's sort of an art if you're not getting the answer that you want, but it will produce an output each time. So here's some examples of chain of thought for those who want to see what that means. So first, identify what the logical problem is. 2, ask the model to provide you the step-by-step reasoning. 3, provide the model with the problem. And 4, the model provides an accurate response. So I copied some examples here. So you have a ball in the cup. Where would the ball be if you turn the cup upside down twice? So if the model thinks, okay, it's having a ball in the cup, you're just turning it upside down, the ball should still be there. But we know something called gravity. We know how the world works. If you turn the cup upside down the first time, we know it will fall on the ground. And if you do it again, there will be no ball in the cup, right? But the model doesn't know that. So how do you help it learn? How do you make it understand and do that output? So using chain of thought, we can say, okay, identify the task and identify this different ways of doing it. So once you tell it to do a chain of thought and think about step by step, it will do first. Okay, first you have a ball inside the open cup. First turn, when you turn the cup side down, the ball will fall out of the cup because the cup is open. So because you're telling it to think about it and do the step-by-step turn, now that the model is saying what happens after each time, it's actually able to return the answer now that it's actually outside the surface where it was. So because we tell it to think about it in a step-by-step turn, it actually produces a better logic versus just asking it twice. So LLMs are really good at summarization, doing NLP tasks, doing understanding, classifying. But once you want it to do more than just that, we actually want it to think. It's better to do chains of thoughts to make it reason more and to get better explanations. One put I put here is that some LLMs already have chain of thought already included as their system prompt, so you don't have to do it. But there's some things that still require explicit mention of this technique. Second part is PC prompt chaining. So yeah, it feels like giving the answer. So you don't tell it the prompt. So you don't tell the answer in the chain of thought. You just tell it to break down your steps before answering. Yes, so if you don't ask to give it the chain of thought, that's why I give the example here. I asked the same question twice, and I got different outputs. I want adding please use chain of thought and work step by step versus just answering the question once. So the answer will be different because again, you're in the chain of thought, you're asking into logic. Prompt chaining. So this is another technique of helping the model think through step by step of how well it can respond. So yes, so if you tell it to do chain of thought once and you're asking the model to do another technique of question, it will continue doing chain of thought once you already ask it once. We'll go through that through the next half of this class of how do you keep going through those chains. So another part of it is prompt chaining, which is another way of doing it, but not exactly like chain of thought where you're doing step by step, but you're actually prompting the model each time to get the answer. So what's good about this? You break the task into smaller steps, improve the accuracy. It's a little bit more scalable, more flexible, and each step can be evaluated. However, it increases complexity. While it simplifies individual steps, the process could be more complex to manage because now you're asking it 3-4 times a certain question to get to a response. It's a little bit more time consuming. So again, it may be it's slower, just like chain of thought is, more resource intensive, and it will produce more output similar as chain of thoughts. So it's very effective in guiding LLMs through a multi-step problem. They'll be challenged to solve correctly on the go. So the techniques can be more of achieve more accurate solutions. So you can do this for content creations, code generations with debugging, and multi-step reasoning tasks. So these are 3 ways you would do PC. So again, going back for the logical problem with the ball in the cup, identify the task, craft your prompts, input the data, get the output, proceed. So the example without PC, so we ask the same question, and then it answers the same way. It's still in the cup, right? But now with prompt prompt chain, how it is you don't ask it, you don't prompt it to say think by step. You have to prompt it yourself, right? So you instead of asking this question, you would ask, you have a ball in the cup. Where will the ball be if you turn the cup upside down? It'll say you turn it upside down, the ball will be all the cup. So what will the ball be if you turn the cup upside down once again? So again, the difference between chain of thought is because you want the model to reason in itself. Meanwhile, prompt chaining is that you're actually prompting the model, breaking down your questions into smaller prompts and trying to get the model to understand the logic through smaller prompts, if that makes sense. So again, this is example as if you're talking to a toddler. That's a very good example. Thank you. So once again, you're talking to the model to get that response to that output. Okay, so like I said before, be very careful of hallucination and biases. Last time we talked about the fundamentals of we talked about some hallucinations, how it could lead to lead some biases. So how can we focus on that? So there's two real reasons of why we get hallucinations and biases. One is the quality of training data sets for the LLMs, and also poor prompting. So this is why I'm focusing more on this, because it really, the output is not dependent on the model. It's dependent on how well you're prompting your model to get that response output, and really understanding the limitations. So there's a good question in the chat regarding chatbots. If you make it your system prompt, the model will always use your system prompt for each question you ask, therefore for not getting its context. And you can also create a chat history in chatbots as well, so it can always read your chat. So just remember, there is a chat limitations. For those who use ChatGPT or even Claude, you can see after messaging it maybe 10, 15 times, it will say, if you keep messaging in this chat, you'll lose ability to keep asking questions, because you'll run out of your question time, right? Because there's so much context you can ask that it'll take a lot of resources. So it won't forget it, but there is the output limitations every single time, input limitations every time. So how do you handle hallucinations? So if you encounter hallucinations in your LLM, refine your outputs. So let's go back to the example I gave last week, which I said who was the first person on Mars, right? The first person who landed on Mars. And then the model responds, Neil Armstrong. So how can you really help it, guide it when you do this, right? So when you give the response, and you can give a context saying, please do not respond to anything you do not know, or try to invent things that you do not know. If you don't know the answer, just say, I don't know. Then you can ask it, who was the first person on Mars? It will say, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer. So because you give it the context to not give out information it doesn't know, it won't because you specifically explicitly asked it, it won't give you that answer. And it's funny that an LLM doesn't know that, right? But it's something that you, as you're getting into this, have to know to handle those hallucinations. And sometimes you may say that, and it'll still give you hallucinations. And there's different ways of strategies of doing this. So however, even giving clear context, examples, and strict prompting formats, the model might generate outputs different from what you asked for, right? Such as adding undesired information to the output right after answering a few questions correctly. The answer to this issue may lie in the size of the context window. So context window, guys, if you remember, is the input of how much data can go in. Context size determines how much memory the model has when processing information. Since the context window includes all the tokens from the inputs, the model's outputs with one dialogue may forget the initial instructions. So if you put too much information, you may not get the information like, why? I'm giving very explicit, I'm giving all the tokens, I'm giving it, why isn't it working? You may have put way too much information and it's forgetting it and not giving that information. That's why it's always good practice to start a new dialogue for new topics. So this strategy not only helps prevent unexpected outputs, but also reduces the cost of each generation run. So here's some quick tips to help you during that process. Lower temperature, make sure the outputs are more deterministic and focused, but not giving corrected responses. So again, when you're doing RAGs or doing things, information component documents, lower that temperature. Use clear specific prompts, but not too verbose. Make sure you're staying under the context length of each model. Use follow-up questions to clarify the model response is accurate and aligns with expectations. So make sure that you follow up and say, you know what, are you sure this is accurate? Can you please show me your thinking of this? So instead of saying, are you accurate? Because the model will say, yes, I'm accurate. But if you say it, please tell me how you thought of this answer step by step. It might even catch its own mistakes sometimes. Say, oh, I forgot that in step 2 I did this, therefore the answer will be this. You'll notice that sometimes while working with LLMs, that sometimes it will catch its own answers. Set constraints and prompts. Instruct the model to stick to known facts or cite sources. Like I said before, if you don't know the answer, do not say I don't. Just simply say I don't know. We talked about restart sessions and experiment with top K and top B values. Remember we talked about these before. and limit the range of possible outputs. So last part I want to talk about for everyone is that, yeah, show your work. That's a good one. Ethical prompt engineering process. So as you're getting into this, I do want to talk about ethical pieces. Although I know you guys aren't that circuit professional, it's for me to let you know that please be very ethical while you do prompt engineering. There are ways, remember we talked before, doing hacks and things like that inside models that could extract harmful information. So please be very careful. Use that knowledge appropriately and use it in a most ethically way. We won't go down that route because we talked about last week. But what I said before is, like I said, this is more for a business type context and sometimes could have legal repercussions if you're not very careful of how you're doing your process. So there's lots of risk frameworks called unethical AI. So we'll just talk about 3 steps from it. But there's a lot more, like I said, there's a lot of information in there that talks about what are the ethical process of doing prompt engineering. So make sure that 1, you understand and recognize biases. So common biases include gender, age, racial, and cultural biases. So remember last time we talked about saying what is the gender of a nurse, and it's female, and it's because it was only trained on female data. It will say that is one of the biases that could come out if you're not evaluating the model's output each time it's coming out. So how do you fix this? Is something called the biasing techniques. And we'll talk about a little bit of that in the next slide. And third is to monitor and measure your biases. So make sure you regularly monitor the outputs, and we go from there. So how do we apply debiasing techniques? So again, a gender bias could be this: describe the journey of a male team leader and a supported female team member as they navigate a challenging project. So again, this presumes gender roles, suggesting that leadership is typically male and female, right? So you have to make sure that you say something that's more gender neutral. This describes the challenge a team leader supports while facing this project, right? So ensure you remove anything that could into how do we include this information. 2, describe ethical and cultural biases. Describe the cultural practices and traditions of an exotic tribe living in a remote jungle. This prompt marginalizes specific ethnic groups by leaving them exotic, which can change that view. And last one is age bias. When we say the word elderly person, we really want to make sure it's various ages with modern technology, right? So it's using counterexamples to challenge bias patterns inside LLMs to avoid stereotypes. So by including diverse and balanced examples, LLMs can learn to avoid biased responses. So that's one way of doing it. Another way someone just asked in the chat is, how do we fix this bias? There isn't a fix to the bias. It's making sure that 1, that we prompt it properly by doing counter examples to reduce bias patterns. And 2, another technique is now we're doing guards, is that before the output comes out, you can have a guard that checks for bias, check for ethnical, culture bias, and age biases. For those who want to understand more about these guards, I'll put in the chat group one specific called Llama Guard, which is a very good way to stop anything in terms of anything sensitivity, harmful languages, biases, etc. You can look into how you can add that to your LLM to before it releases an output. It will check that and it will say, sorry, I cannot respond to this because it's part of my response that it's not debiased enough, or etc. like that. Okay. All right. So that was today's lesson today. Like I said before, I always do a little Kahoot at the end and finish it off this way. So if everyone can go to Kahoot and let's sort of go that link, I'll start the questions.
Louis, just quick question. Okay.
Yes.
So I do understand like prompting needs to be the user needs to learn this prompting, but isn't this neural networks or AI is supposed to be for a common user who does not know how to write a prompt with specific engineering skills, right? Like, so it should be more neutral to the audience, right? So why is it like prompt engineering becoming more prominent now? So is it like, are we saying that it's only for the users who have some technical skills?
So example, you can create so that's a very good way, for example, for example, for me, I work for a volunteer group that helps towards climate change. So when you go to ChatGPT and say, I want to know about climate change, the model won't know your age, the model won't know your background, won't know how won't know that you know acronyms. So when I say help me with climate change, it might throw out big terminologies that as me in grade 9 won't know. So it's up to the users like you to create LLM with certain prompting. It's like, please answer as a grade 9 student, don't use acronyms, don't use this, don't use that, and be able to respond to a user's inquiry as it goes on. So as you said before, LLMs are trained on general knowledge, like billions and billions of data, but they're not trained to know who the user is, how the responses are doing, and do that. So there are some models have been trained not to give hateful information out, harmful information out inside the layers while it's being trained. And some of them have been trained to not give unethical responses. But again, it's up to the user itself to make sure they're following up to that information. Hopefully that makes sense. Does that answer it?
Yes, thanks.
Let's see. Okay. I think we're almost there for everyone. Okay, I think we have 26 users. I think everyone's a little partied out, if those who haven't joined. Yeah, let's give it. Oh, there's a lot of people joining more. Awesome. Wow, wait, we have more people than last week. That's great. Okay, I think 35, let's start now. So we just from the time and click start. Awesome. So remember, it's role, context, and instructions. So that's correct. So the perspective or identity the role must assume to complete the task. So remember, you are now a project manager. You are now a software engineer. So identifying who is that, what's the identity? Okay. Rish is so far leading the scoreboard. So remember, to get on the scoreboard is how fast you answer and how accurate your answer responses are, and it gets you more points. So remember, you're leading a team that's developing a new mobile app aimed at improving. So you're giving the context of what you're trying to do, right? So You're given the context that one, it's leading a team. You're not saying you're a manager of a team. That's why that's why it's not a role. You're given the context of leading a team. Ooh, Crash got up to this one.
I don't see the question in the when I go to Kahoot. I only see the boxes, red, blue, green.
If you can see my question, I'm sharing my screen too. So how does the temperature on parameter influence AI output? It looks like everyone got perfect on this one. So seems like it's a great response. Are you still having issues viewing the screen?
Yeah, I don't see. I just see the 4 boxes.
did-
I'm
It's
sharing my
same
screen.
here. So we see the question in the Zoom window and we answer it in the
browser.
browser.
Yeah, that's how it works. That's how it works. So yeah.
But you
Keep
answered
on
well,
Zoom.
Sudhir.
Keep it on Zoom for the questions.
All 33 are right. That means you answered it correctly. Good.
Good. All right, next question. All right, good job, Prash. Let's go.
Where are you guys seeing questions? I don't see. I see only the Luis on the my Zoom screen.
Let's see. You still only see that?
Hey Sudhir, at the top of the Zoom window, there are 2 things. Top left, meeting Louis screen. You may be on the meeting view. Click on Louis
Yeah, I
screen.
got it. I got it. I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so it seems like majority everyone got this one right. So what is prompt tuning in the context of interacting with language models? It's always going and improving the response and iterating to make sure you're aligning with your objectives.
I think you need to super fast to read all 4 answers.
Yes, that's why it's a game. It's a time limit. Who can read the fastest and respond fastest? So what does output evaluation towards your request mean? This is something we talked about in today's lesson, is checking if the output aligns what was being asked in the prompt. Okay. So zero-shot prompting is when you don't give any examples to the model and you ask it, right? Crash is still winning on the winner board. All right, 2 more questions left. This is a harder question. So for this one, it doesn't reduce complexity. We know that it's harder, that the prompt chaining makes it more complex. Sorry, actually, the answer is modularity. I messed up on this one. So the answer is supposed to be modularity. Sorry about that one. But it should be modularity. So it doesn't reduce the computational cost. It increases computational cost, and it does not increase speeds if it's slower. So the answer is modularity. Sorry for that one, guys. Correct. So chain of thought uses a single prompt, while prompt chaining uses multiple interconnected prompts. Okay. I know that was a little bit harder because there's a lot to read, but last question. So there's a very good question. So before we start and apply the debiasing techniques, we have to understand what all the different biases first. So you have to understand and recognize the bias. So it's the prompt engineering process, not that part first. And that's why number 11 is correct. The orange one. But let's see who's winner. Good job, Praneeth. Awesome job. Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining us quickly. So we're going to take a quick break for about 2-3 minutes before we start getting into some of the coding aspects of today's class. So we'll be joining soon. We'll put a timer in roughly for 3 minutes and we'll continue.
Hey, Luis, quick question.
Yes. Yes. Oh, Shelley, if you're asking a question, you're on your mute.
Sorry.
All right.
I have to leave now. Do you think I can catch up with your recordings and the class office hours later?
Yes, so please follow up with the recordings. I'm just going to go through examples of running them, and follow up in the office hour if you have any questions on how to run your notebook from there.
Sure. Thank you so much, Luis.
No problem. All right. Enjoy your morning.
Thank you. And you too, you have a good weekend.
Okay, everyone. Now is the time. We're going to start again. We really want to maximize our time, what we're having here. So, okay, everyone. So what I'm going to focus on today is actually now our aspect. So now that you understand the fundamentals, now you understand what we're working with, we can actually go in and start working with these models. What I want to walk you through are actually, I went through when I started learning about LLMs, I actually had some official training inside Google's headquarters here in Toronto. I've had some key contacts in there. And so today we're going to be working with an AI studio, which is the developer side of Google. And we're going to look at some developer notebooks as well. They have been changed and modified for our training classes, but I'll show you where to see the official notebooks inside the engines as well. So it's really a big treat we can share with the class today, all these different things, notably because using API keys and using this all usually cost money. So it's great that we can have this development site up and running for us and be able to start testing it without any costing. So first, what we're going to talk about is the AI Studio Google. So for those who have gone through the prerequisites, you can go to this site and be able to sign in with your Gmail, and it brings you to something very similar to ChatGPT. And for those who are, again, I have this site open because for those who aren't really into coding, don't really want to get into that deeper side, and it's okay. And we won't push you to do that if you're not that comfortable. But I will be showing both the non-coding side and the coding side, just so you can have an understanding and be able to do the things you want to do yourself here without feeling overwhelmed of the need of coding. So let's begin. So when you start with Google AI Studio, it gives you a couple of things. One is called your system instructions, what you can name your prompt and what you want it to ask. So again, the point is of an LLM, you can ask it very simple questions of the single like, hello, how are you? And you can answer your questions. I'm an AI language model, so I don't have any feelings or experience like humans do, but I'm ready here to assist you and how can I help you today, right? So we're asking simple promptings of just even asking how the model is. This is something that most of you may already know and already know with the different models. So on the right side, we have different models. I'll go through a little bit, not right now, but once you go through the notebooks of which one each models do, when to use each model and when to do it. So right now I'm just using Flash because it is the fastest Gemini model that they have. On the right side, you can see that it has up to 1 million token counts. So remember we talked about how much tokens input and output it can do. This one interaction took 48 tokens of just simple hello, how are you, and that output that's saying. We talked about temperature, how deterministic and how creative we want it to be up to a level of 1, right? Of how creative we want it to be. If you wanted different tools of making running code, different things like that, there are the options on the right side. And safety settings. So you can edit the safety settings as this has some already of harassment, hate, sexually explicit content, or dangerous content. It will block most of them, etc., depending on your use case. There could be one extra that you can create for these ones called ethical bias as well, and you can block some of these conversations. So this is how you would run your safety settings on this side. So again, I'll walk you through a couple of this. So just one last thing I want to show you on this side. For those who want to compare and use and compare how well the model responds, there's actually a cool function on here called compare. So you can actually grab one model with Gemini 1. Flash, which is known to do summary, versus Gemini 1.5 Pro, which is the smarter model, right? So you can ask the question to both of them and say, if I had a ball in the cup and flipped it upside down twice, where will the ball be at the end of this. Run. So I'm asking the same question to both models and saying how well the response. So first, let's analyze the first one. The ball will be back in the cup. So again, we see that logic is wrong, right? Because we didn't tell it to do chain of thought, but this one says flip one. It tries to do chain of thought itself. The ball will be at the bottom of the cup. Flip two, the ball will be back in the position at the top of the cup. Think of it, flip a coin. You can flip, so again, it's trying to find something very similar to that cup decision, but it's answered this way. The pro model answered, if you have a ball in a cup and you flip the cup upside down twice, the ball will be under the cup. If you flip it upside down a second time, the cup will be on the right side of the cup. So maybe this needs a little bit more understanding of how I can change the prompt to make it understand better. But in the end, I think this one has a better 1.5 has a little bit more understanding itself. So again, on your own time, try it yourself. There are different models. Click on it, and you can determine what the model is each time.
So Louis, it will since you're comparing, it will use
Yes.
up more tokens, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so this one's using one token, and this is going to use another one. So that's a good thing about this is that you don't have to worry about hitting limits, anything like that itself, simply because we're doing the split. It's going to use this as a separate token because it has to do its own process that way.
So you're saying that tokens will be used, more tokens will be used if you're comparing.
No, so example, when it's comparing the tokens, it's pretty much opening a second conversation and using a second.
Oh, I see. Each of them will have a separate million tokens, is it?
Correct.
Okay.
Basically, they don't share the context.
Correct.
Okay.
They don't. Everything you'll be typing in the chat, they will be putting it separately. So example here, I can ask it separately. Right now it's syncing, right? I can unsync and by my own instructions, please answer like a pirate. And here I can say, please answer in Old English and write me a short paragraph on why LLMs are cool. And I run this. It's able to answer both questions in both different ways of how the model is able to respond. And you could see that I'm giving two different system instructions at the same time of how I want it to respond and be able to answer at the same time as well. And this is how you can compare both models very quickly and answer that way. So this is a very quick way to understand which model would be best for your use case.
Louis, I think the way I interpreted Vish's question was using more prompt means it costs you more money, right? Naturally.
If you're using your own example, if you're using your own API that's cost money, yes, it will use two APIs, which will send the cost out. But in terms of tokens, it will not, each session will use its own limit token. So this one has 1 million itself, that one has 1 million itself.
Correct. Okay, cool. That means they are utilizing tokens. Let's say if you are given a set of tokens for you to use across all LLMs, you're exhausting your tokens quickly.
Yes, if you're using usually that, but usually there's no restrictions on number of tokens to use. It's usually per model, the number of inputs you can use. So that's why there's not really saying you can only use a certain amount of tokens and that's it. You can put there's a restrictions. You can put restriction. Usually things you can have restrictions of how many you can tokens per day. But again, if you were to do this inference for both of these, this would probably be like 0.0001 cent to run both of these at the same time in terms of that way. So let's say you have a max token of 9,000 per day. That's where you can use it and run through problems that way, right? So it's best to always use free stuff and develop yourself and make sure you're not putting obviously any confidential information on here, but this is how you would go and you start testing your different ways of use cases.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right, so for those who are not that coding experience, feel free to use this at any time. All you have to do is click create a new prompt. I'll be walking through the coding. I'll do one example how to do this on the coding and on this site for those who just want to follow along. For myself, I will use Visual Studio Code to walk through the steps here.
So Louis, each prompt gets a million tokens. Is that how it is?
Not each prompt, yeah. So the prompt total, the conversation history. So if you put in here, let's say half a notebook that has 500,000 tokens, right? You ask a question, you copy and paste it, and you say summarize this conversation, and use 500,000 tokens. It will be able to process all that at once, and it's fine. But once you grab that one and say, okay, now make me another summary, and here's another 500,000 tokens. So if you use another million on top of that, that's where you'll get cut off, and it won't read all your documents.
I see.
So just make sure you don't pass in your one question answer if you're doing compounds. That will overpass your token limit, and this will give you your token count on the right side to help you understand where you are.
God, okay.
Yeah. So always use this as a check. Answer questions, you get it back. So I'll do a multi-turn for you, right? So hello, how are you? And it's going to answer this question. It's going to say it's used 6 tokens. That's good. How can you help me today? So you can see here, as you continue on, instead of using 6 tokens now, you use 314.
So it's basically both questions and answer response together is what tokens?
Yes, because this is a chat, not just a one answer. It's going to compound.
Is this 1 million limit because it's a free version, or it's a capacity of the LLM itself?
It's a capacity of the LLM itself.
Okay.
Actually, if you create a new prompt, again, it starts from scratch, right? Beginning.
Correct. So I click the new prompt, it goes back to 0.
So it's not for pricing, it is a limitation of the LLM.
Correct. And that's why I said in the presentation before, every single time we talk about a new topic, it's always best to create and generate a new topic to make sure you're staying within your limits.
Okay, so the temperature setting, I mean, it happens to be having a number beyond 1. So, I mean, how will that be useful? Because, I mean, I think you mentioning that, okay, 0 to 1 is the usual range, but I think here it goes beyond 1. So,
yeah, so an example of this, well, I know you guys are jumping ahead of the things, but I like you guys getting an inquiry on this, but write me a short story. So because of the safety models, you'll have to play around. Why? So simple, because you have to be very sometimes explicit. So Google does this because, again, you want to make sure you're using things effectively, right? You're not doing anything that's not wrong. So this is what happens when I write Lily loved the ladybug to climb, blah, 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 blah. So what happens if I change the temperature down to 0? Write the same questions. So this you can see this one's more conversational, more like upbeat. Lady loved to climb. So Burnaby the bear loved to collect shiny things. So again, check the temperature and see how well the different conversations can go from there. But we'll be jumping that to next. So guys, just bear with me as we go through this, because we won't have time to do a lot of things if I continue going with this. Okay. So just let me go through the introductions. We'll be doing breakout rooms soon and be able to go through some codings ourselves. So I'm going to go through the notebook that's through the GitHub called the class notebook prompting. So I generated this one for everyone just to go through as a class example. You don't have to do this one with me. This one is more me explaining a little bit what we're trying to do here. So I created this one for the class, just talk a little about how the background looks like. As you can see here, everything in no coding is simply already built out for you on this design. Meanwhile, on this back end, we have to import the packages that need to run the APIs here. It's important to have your Gemini IP key here already in there. So for those who remember, you get API key, you load it into your book and save it as a secrets. And then you can create the model. So remember we talked about when you create our model, there's a max token output here. So I put 8,000 tokens as a max output. You can change this to 20, you can change this to 30, you can change this to 50, depending on your use case. And this is where you really want to change it rather than just writing in here, give this to me in only 10 words, because the model won't be, it's not using a logical calculator to count the words, right? It's not good at math because it's not a mathematical model, it's an LLM. Trying to guess and try to understand the output. So eventually it won't get it all right unless it has some a plugin with Python that can count its word for itself. It's not a mathematical model, and that's something I just want to make sure you understand. These are different defaults for top P and top K. These are just typical defaults temperatures, and for temperature, I just put 1 for now as the most creative. So for doing this, I put what's missing on this part because if you try to run it, it's not going to run. But to start a session, you just do chat session and you start your chat. So the model I'm going to use is Gemini 1.5 Flash. As you can see here, this is the Flash model, which is the fastest for us today. And I'm going to ask a quick question. If it knows what is VSF Tech Club, right? So if I run this, please provide me more context. It doesn't know, it's not really no organization. Help me understand, like, where did you counter this term? Is this a website, school, or social media post? What's the context? Etc. from there. So max output tokens is different from 1 million context. So 1 million tokens is the total number of tokens a model can consume at a single time. Meanwhile, you're crafting how much on this token here is how much it can output from your question response. So let's say you only make it 300 and it's a chat history, right? Because you created 300, let's say you could now have 900 chats with the model. But if you were to increase it to 800 and the model is being more verbose in responses, then you can only have 50 chats with the model now, right? Simply because of the max tokens it can take per chat history. So how can we help it understand more? Yes, you can create a RAG, but I don't think we need to do that. We can do something a little bit more simple.
So Luis, sorry to interrupt. So you just said something about tokens. I didn't get that part. Like
there's a question in the chat that says how different are max output tokens different from the 1 million tokens? So your max output tokens is this line here, tells you how much tokens it can be outputted as your limit.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha. Okay, sorry. I thought you were showing something on the right side of the screen.
No. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Thank you.
So for those following along and just want to know how to do it on non-coding exercise using your book, and to say what is VSF Tech Club yourself, I'm asking that question, right? So that's how simple it is on the front end side. So we don't have to create a RAG, but what if we give it some prompting, right? So I'm telling it now, I'm giving a role, you're a helpful assistant. So again, going back to what we learned before, what's the role? You're going to be a helpful assistant for our club group. And here's what you need to know. I'm giving its context now of what it needs to be, what it knows, what VSF Tech Club is. So because I'm giving it context of what it is, I'm telling, here's the output. So role, context, output. I want you to maintain a professional, helpful tone while discussing the steps and its activities. So now that I have a system prompt, I add that to my code and say add a system prompt and the chat message So what it does, it will now take what is VS Tech Club, what it does, add that to the system prompt before it responds. So when I click play, so now it responds to me, VSF Tech Club is a professional development organization based in the Bay Area to empower high-tech professionals. It's a community can sharpen and go, and now it's giving me actual real information about VSF Tech Club without me fine-tuning the model, without me adding extra information to the model, without extra information in the sense of adding it to the training data. I actually can do it in the prompt itself for it to learn and be able to answer the questions, right? So for those who want to follow along, on the notebook itself without using any coding, you would copy this top part and you add that to the system instructions. So the system instructions is what it will follow every single time you ask a question. And then I can ask it the same question at the bottom. So again, adding it to the system instructions of what it's supposed, what VSF Club is, as remember before, it didn't know unless it had more context. So adding to the system instructions can add and answer questions. So I just want to show you that, again, this is part of prompt engineering. This is where your prompt engineering goes to in the system instructions. The prompt engineering doesn't go to when you ask a question to the model. The prompt engineering always goes to when you create your instructions for the model. Okay, so now that those who are following along knows how to copy the system prompts into the questions and how to do this, I won't go through the front end anymore, simply just to save time of where we are, but just understand that all you have to do is copy and paste in a very plug and plain manner. Okay, so I already showed this example before, but you're a helpful assistant of VS Tech Club, and how does it must respond? You must respond as a pirate, right? So when I ask this question, it's answering the same questions, but now it's giving it to me a way of responding in a different way, in a different format, simply because I'm asking it to answer me in a certain ways. So that's a very good question. No, so once we have the system prompt and add it to our model, all you have to do is copy these same two responses below it and ask another question, and we'll pull the same context up here again. This every single time we change the system prompt, this is where you will need to do it. So LLMs are really good at NLP techniques. So remember before we talked about how remember those who understand NLP, natural language processing. NLP was done to do summaries, extract topics, extract information, and also do classification, sentiment analysis. So even with a model, you can tell it to extract sentiment analysis and respond with negative, positive, neutral inside the system prompt. So I really don't like learning, but GenAI is super cool, right? So something negative and something positive. So when the model answers what kind of message it is, it's going to give me something neutral because it's giving me something that's positive and something negative. But if I say I don't really like learning and I just extract that part, it's able to respond that's only purely negative, right? So again, these are different examples of use cases that you can give an LLM to really understand of what capabilities you can do in terms of your story that you want to create. So how can you create metrics? So for those who, again, if you're not really big into ML or who've never done machine learning before, you don't have to focus too much on this part, but this is for someone who want to really get deeper into how metrics are created. So ones who know about what F1 score is and how to do the scoring, you can tell the model to provide the response of positive, mixed, or negative. You can tell the test cases of what you want it to be. So here's the response, and here's what the real responses are. You can tell the model to generate its own responses, and then we can test it against how well the responses are working. So once we can look at it through the precision, predicted, and recall on F1 score. So first text, you can text it as, I really don't like this, so what's the response? It's mixed. What's the predicted outcome? What's the expected? And what's the F1 score for this? And then what's the F1 score for this? And what's the F1 score for this? And what's the average between all of them, right? So for those who want to see how well a model actually is doing with actual real metrics and evaluations, this is an example you can do where you can actually add an F1 score to a model to see how well it's able to do it, simply because we're doing some NLP techniques. All right, so more metrics. So this was now for more everyone. So how do you really evaluate the response of a model? So one of them is called Rouge. Rouge is a metric to evaluate the quality of the text by comparing it to reference docs. And it focuses on n-grams and word sequences. So n-grams is an NLP word, representing of how well, like representing pretty much like a verb or sometimes adverbs, or depending on what it is, and how many times it actually says that word as well in the text, right? So you can use this for RAGs when you want to see how well it's actually pulling word per word of a document. You can do this in terms of how close is it to actually the real document, etc. So what we're going to do is, here's a system prompt. You are a summarization system. So now we're telling it needs to summarize. For each input, summarize the text in a concise manner. And 2, provide only the summary. You don't need to explain why you create that summary. So I'm telling it the role, the context, and how the output I want it to be. So I want it to be creative, so I put a temperature as 1 there. So here's the input text that it needs to summarize. Here's this reference summary that I know that I can summarize, that the summary needs to be. Now, let's compare how my summary compares to how well the LLM summary can be, right? So when I click on this, I can see the summary here. So AI, so it's the difference between like my handwritten summary of that comment versus the LLM summary going on. So let's see how well or how close it is to what my summary is. So we can use Rouge score to determine how well my reference summary is versus the AI summary is. So when you run the package Rouge score, it will tell me my precisions, my recalls of how well that model actually responded and compared to my response. So there's Rouge M1, Rouge 2, and Rouge L. So Rouge 1 generates, so it's capturing about 62% of what I wrote in my reference summary compared to the AI summary as well to there. This one, Rouge 2, shows the match of how well it's scoring to the match, and Rouge L. So overall, the text captured some of the keywords from the reference, but it still struggled maintaining the correct word order and structure. So for this, then I can go back and say to my output and saying, okay, it's good at automating tasks, so that's right. That does the order, decision making, delivering data sets, that's sort of close. New opportunities matches that. It didn't mention anything about entertainment, job displacement, etc. So I can go back to my system prompt and say, I specifically want you to add all the applications from the text in here and see how well that difference changes. And you can run your Rouge score again and see if that betters the score. So I won't be able to do that through just because of time, but I'm just giving you an example of this is what you can then show stakeholders and say, how well is your model doing? You can compare, well, my F1, my Rouge score between what my RAG is doing versus what I'm doing is this high, and this is how I can create evaluation metrics.
What does these numbers score, recall, and F measure means?
So again, this is where I ask people just maybe to brush up a little bit on a little bit of ML in terms of just the evaluation metrics. So precision recall is how well a model has false positives or false negatives to a response. So precision is pretty much the number of accurate responses divided by the total number of responses. And recall is the number of negatives compared to the total number from there. False on it's pretty so pretty much a confusion matrix for that. So maybe it's interesting because I have time right now. I just need to keep going through there. Maybe some people can put some more information of that in the text. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Good. Another way to do this is the BLEU score. So the BLEU score is a metric to evaluate the metric similar to this, but this is to more understand bilingualism. So if you're going to do a study of how does English, I'm doing an English RAG comparing to Hindi, and how well it's able to respond in terms of a generation, or I'm doing English to Spanish, or I'm doing French to English. What is there really any metrics? And that's where the BLEU score comes in. It's to help the translation of text generation and how well it's doing. So again, I just put an example here as well. And this one I just put for English and English to see how well the English could do on that BLEU score itself. Because I didn't put in a different language, it didn't change that much for myself. But that's where I just gave everyone just a quick example. Everyone has this notebook in the GitHub site. So again, for individuals who want to go through this and understand it more, please go through it. Office hours are Wednesdays. We can go in and go deeper into each of these different things. But I just gave that as a quick the opportunity for this class to get into that. Okay, so I said we'll be talking about how the Google API works and how we're getting in there and what are the different ways of doing this. So I said this was modified for ourselves. So this is from this GitHub repo. These conversations are coming from Holt Skinner in terms of the generative AI under the Google platform site. For those who want to understand more about different sessions that way. The only thing you need to understand is that from these notebooks, they're meant to work with a Vertex AI GCP environment, but we're not using GCP. We're not using Vertex AI. We're using notebooks and we're using Google Colab to go through these things. So that's why I've modified these notebooks to be able to work with just a Google API. And these are modified for this. So you'll see a lot of things that are uncommented, because it's saying install Vertex AI SDK. Because we're not inside Vertex AI, don't try to install things that because these are things that are not inside Vertex AI. You're also not authenticating inside Colab as well. Yeah, but simply just we'll see at the end of time. We can go through this in Colab itself. So all you're doing is in Colab, just putting this notebook inside Colab and is running each line. So the only thing you need to do is anything that's not commented, you need to run. So all you have to do, example, run this part, import Python, you should have status OK, and it's just restart your kernel. So in the API itself, no, I'll be doing the Colab afterwards, based off time right now. So inside the Gemini model APIs, there's Gemini Pro 1.5, Pro 0.2, which is the new version of Gemini Pro. There's an experimental version that you can try out, which is, you can see how funny, sometimes the experimental models are pretty funny in terms of responses, so you can always go and try these. There's Gemini 1.1 Flash, which is sort of optimized for faster responses. So then there's a new one just came out called Flash 8B, which is very small and it's really fast. So again, if you're just trying to test things out and you want to see how fast your model is responding, how well the model is, you can always use Flash 8B and you can see how fast it generates and responds that way. Gemini 1.0 Pro was the old model, which is funny because we were just using Gemini 1.0 Pro just maybe 4 or 5 months ago of how well it used to responded, but now it's come to 1.5 Pro. There's also very lightweight models called the Gemma models. And these are actually open source as well. So you don't have to have Google documentations. These ones can be fine-tuned. These can be modified. And these are things that Google has given out. The reason why I'm going through Google is because they're giving us that free API. And we're able to go through some demo lessons. Unfortunately, ChatGPT does not have free API services just as of yet to try their model, neither Claude or Anthropic, but there's another one called Cohere. Cohere does give an API as well, as a developer API, and you can go through it as well. But I decided to go through this one simply because Gemini is a little bit more how it is. So again, you can create your model to interact with whatever model if you want. If you're willing to spend your extra money and you want to create your own API keys and test it that way, you can use ChatGPT's API. You can use other APIs yourself, but I'm giving you guys a free developer one on this on these have, and go from there. So someone made a good question. What does this model have? Each one is trained differently with different training sets, different weights to them. Some of them are optimized for speed. Some of them are optimized for more logical parts. So I put a model selection guide. It's a good question. So Gemini 1.0 is best for complex tasks. So this one's trained more on logic. 1. Flash is more optimized for faster responses, removing layers from the model itself to get more optimized speeds. Flash 8B is more lightweight, so you can load this more on a computer and run it from that way. And Gemma models are more open models, right? So you can see how the model weights are created. So remember we talked about in the first model, there's closed source models and open source models. Closed source models are models that don't share how their weights are done and how they're created. So you can't see what the layers are, like what layers are hidden or what's been attributed to what to get the responses. Meanwhile, open source models are models in which they actually give you how they train the model, how they put weights under certain things. They can give more, sometimes they give more weights towards the softmax. Sometimes they give more weights towards inside the transformer. So when you click open weights, you can actually see all the scoring they give to each of the models. So the model knows how to train its way to be that way. So that's the difference between closed models and open models. Open source versus closed source is that open source, they tell you exactly how a model is trained, versus closed source are more, they're not shared with you. You don't know how to replicate it or how the model was trained at all. Okay, so again, just run through the different packages of what you need to be understanding. So again, these are just different examples of what can be done. Classification, sentiment analysis, entity extractions, summarizations, concept ideations, and concept supplications. So again, before you simply just start loading your model on these notebooks. Again, if you're doing the front end, you don't need to load a model. All your model is already loaded. And you create your first prompt. What is a large language model? I'm not putting any context, right? So answer what a LLM is. Simply just like the way in the front end you can ask what an LLM is on that side, right? So you can try your own prompt. I put different examples in here, put it in here itself. Each trend should be less than 5 words. So let's see it actually does it. This one, 1, 2, 3, 4 actually does sometimes 4 words. But what happens if it doesn't, if whoever gives you more than 6 words, 7 words? This is where you can actually go back and change your output token and say, you can change it to 12 or 13 to get that interaction to be only less than 5 words. So here's our templates you can use to try yourself. So you can change the industry to marketing, you can change the industry to different things, and create a numbered list of 10 items. Each item should be a trend in my industry, which is functioning here, industry, right? So I put tech. So I put on tech here. Here's some top trends under 5 words from the tech industry. But if I change this to legal, it trains about legal trends, right? So again, you can create prompts that just has to be adjusted with sort of only 1 word. So you can leave the prompt alone and you can just change the variables in them itself. So I'm just going through some times here. Okay. So we already did a temperature we already did a temperature check on the front end of if we were to compare the different temperatures to exact same question. Complete the sentence. When I opened my toolkit, I was surprised to find. So I opened my toolkit, I was surprised to find a perfectly anti-compass That was with a 0.2, 0.5. So it said antique screwdriver with a gleaming mahogany handle. So it's able to answer that way. This one says a miniature tea set nestled among the wrenches and screwdrivers. As you can see, the conversation is getting a little bit more verbose. And this one is Spencer to find a perfectly preserved hand-drawn map of a neighborhood firm by Chanley tucked inside the wrench compartment. So yes, you can see it getting very poetic as the different temperatures add on. So I just did this example as you compare the different temperatures on your prompt, how that really affects your responses. So again, this is something that everyone can go in and check out yourselves. So when I talked about, remember I talked about before, you can change how long a model responds. Here, I'm just saying this is the max output tokens. I only want 5 output tokens. And if I ask the same question, list 10 ways. Remember, I'm asking for a paragraph. What would happen if I asked it to give something for a paragraph? It's only going to cut off the line. I think configuration config, I changed it here. So I can change that later, but generation config is it'll just cut off that line. It won't give me the full length simply because I changed that output to 5. It cuts it off and won't go there. So when I change it to 500, this is what happens. It goes from that 5 lines to a 500 huge list of how much output tokens I can have. So
Quick question, Luis. If you have 5 tokens and you say ask LLM to continue, it'll still keep rolling up or no?
No, it'll cut off. It will cut off.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
just keep cutting off. Yeah.
Thank you.
So one cool thing about this too is this is something that can be done inside the notebook and outside in terms of Google Cloud. So let me just go here and I think I had it on this side. All right, I wonder if it has it on this. So let's see, add markdown. Okay, this one doesn't have a markdown click. Usually some LLMs do, but you can display your response in markdown. And when you do that, you can see how it's more pretty now, right? So this is how it was done before. Now adding a markdown response, you can get how we can change the response to more visually appealing response. So I'll also give you guys what happens if you change the top P parameter. Here's some examples of that. I'm just going to quickly go through this simply because of time, guys. And I really want to just talk about next concepts in there. VS Code is free. You can always install VS Code on your computer. It's free. If you want something easier, you can use Google Colab as well. So VS Code is more, you have to install your packages yourself. You have to make sure there's no conflicts. And a little bit more of a developer, you can change the color. Like you see, mine's more customized for those who do more coding every day. But for those who just want something simple and clean, Google Colab is really the best place for those who are doing something very simple.
Hey, Luis, on that note, is it possible for you to quickly show whatever you're doing using Colab?
Yeah. So let me just finish off this notebook and then I'll switch over to Google Colab. So here's the top K parameter in this example of this and from this part. So here's a chat model again using Gemini Flash. You saw how easy it was on the front end to compare what happens if you compare Gemini Flash with Gemini 1.5 Pro, and how diverse each model will respond. So if you want something more logical, you would go for Gemini 1.5 Pro. If you want something fast and in summarization, you would use the Flash. So with using 1.5 Pro, how fast it's able to respond to that answer. And someone asked, but how do you keep the context and how do you keep going? Because you already defined the function here, on below, I put the same chat send message and say, can you give me a catchy title for the paper? So I'm not going in and copying and pasting that single line every single time to get a response. I just need to copy my function of chat send message, add it again here in chat send message. Can you give me a catchy title for the pod title? So it's actually grabbing everything that we've done here already and adding in, here's some titles to the article that we're creating. So that was a good question that someone asked during the meeting. So here's an advanced chat model. So again, this is something that I gave this guys to you. So when you want to create your own chat model that's sort of more in advanced ways, here you can use this as a prompt. So your system prompt is saying, my name is Ned. You are my personal assistant, and my favorite movies are Lord of the Rings and Hobbit, right? So we're giving it extractions of a little bit who I am, what it's trying to do, and a little bit more about me. So are my favorite books based on a book series? So he responds, yes, both Lord of the Rings and Hobbits are based on books by J.R.R. Tolkien. Hobbit was published in this time, and answering that question. So you guys can copy this text inside Google Colab itself and ask it and create your own functions this way. So yes, you will continue sending the same context if you're grabbing that print and send messages. So it will grab the same context for above. So how do you end the context? You have to create a new system prompt inside the notebook itself to sort of create and wipe that clean. Or you have to restart the notebook itself to start the new conversation. So the last part here is embedding models with text embedding Gecko 001. So remember we talked about how to do, how it gets ingested into a vector inside the LLM is when you input a question, it turns into a vector. What does that vector look like, and how does that respond? So when it gets ingested into your question, I'm using a model that's inside Gemini called Text Embedding 004. I ask, what is the meaning of life? It's able to give me what the vector embedding looks like for that one text. So I can then say, okay, cool, I can do embeddings now. And this is how it takes us to maybe 2 classes from now, but how do we do RAGs? How do we ingest documents that a model can read? And part of it is to embed your document into these vector storages and ingest them into numbers. So you'll have your document, your paragraph into chunks, and an embedding vector just like this beside it. So someone asks you a question and say, I don't know what life's about. It's not going to look into your documents and look for that exact same words. It's going to first convert your question, what is life about, into a vector store, and then compare your embedding that you have here based off similarity scores and pull you the most embedding questions that's most related to that. And compare it that way. And that's how we'll get deeper into it in later classes, but that's pretty much how the RAG would work. So here's another way of doing embeddings into a data frame. So this is how this looks like. So here's some random text I created. So I enjoyed the movie last night, blah, 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 blah. So I put them to a pandas data frame, just to grab this. Here's some questions. So how can I embed these quickly? So I just gave you guys a code as well to how to embed them. So from the embedding model, here's how to embed and get the embedding. So here's your text now, and here's the embeddings that you have directly for each one. You can then push this to a vector store, which we'll talk about later on, and be able to start doing some RAGs on that way. So I just give you a quick ways of doing how to do a quick vector embedding and what it actually looks like when your model actually consumes a question as well, when it gets into that area. There are different embedding models, and some of them are more fine-tuned towards languages. So some that are embedded to English languages are really great embedding for English languages. You can create embeddings for Spanish, you can create for Hindi, for any type of language you can, and you can fine tune it to get it to be really, really good. Unfortunately, right now, English is one of the top languages this code is being built on. So there's really great English embeddings, but there's multilingual ones out there that can look at maybe 10 to 30 different languages at the same time and provide you really good embeddings. And Cohere, I'll keep playing them because they're a very good open source company, it has developed some really good multilingual embeddings that can go up to over 100 different languages they can do really great vector stores that way. So just due of time, I know I didn't get through majority of these, but this is doing examples of similarities of what's the similarity scores of I really enjoyed the movie last night. What's that similarity score to that language, that question? What's the similarity score to this? Just to show you how a model will look at your question and really compare it to see which one's the most appropriate one for you, right? So this is to really, I'll get deeper into this at the RAG, but how to do a code generation. So you load your model, I just called it code. Write a Python function to do binary search. This is Google, this is Visual Studio Code that I have. But for those who want to stay after class, I can quickly go through a Google Colab simply because we're running out of time right now. So write a Python function to do a binary search. You can prompt your model to do a function to that way. So then it will tell you, okay, here's how to generate some code, right? Here's some definitions, arguments, here's your code. So you can write your own prompt. You can tell me to write a Python function to do this. And you can tell it to, and it gives you the Python functions as well, right? You can change this to SQL, you can change it to Java, you can write different programming yourself, but how can you create your own coding program yourself, right? Prompt templates. So here's some good ways to help you format it if you're doing code. So here's the language, C++. I want it to be JSON format, and I want you to extract names. And I want you to, the name should be starting with capital letters, and there should be no duplicate names in the final list. So there's different ways you can prompt. So this is all part of prompt engineering, where you can actually, here's your prompt, but you can also define variables inside your prompt to even make it more complex. And this is something you can't do on the front end. And this is really what I was talking about before, why coding is more powerful of developing your own model, simply because you can add variables, you can add extractions and add different things in there. So create a language. So language is C++. I can change it to Java, to parse file format, JSON, and extract info, names with the following requirements. So I can say here, do this for me. So then I run it and it's able to extracting the information that I'm looking for. Code completion. This is pretty much anyone who's done GitHub Pro. They said we can help you with code completion, but helps software engineers 60% faster. This is pretty much what they do. Is they have the same prefixes and add in. Okay, we'll add your temperature in. We want it very low because we want deterministic. And said find X string and SX and finish my code for me, right? So when you click play, it's going to run and it's going to give you that function of finding X and help you finish off your Python code that you didn't finish. So again, this is what code generators do. They help you. They've been trained on Python code, and they're able to extract information. So I'm using all the same LLM that can help you answer questions, the same LLM that can help you think of stories, can also help you create your code as well. So you can also chat with it. The good thing with Gemini is that you don't have to say write Python or anything like that. You can say, please help me write a function to calculate the minimum of 2 numbers. And it'll give you a Python function. And so you're not telling it, you can say, I'm a beginner in Python, help me write this function. And it's able to give you a Python function code and able to explain to you what it does as well. So just keep in mind that the coding isn't perfect. You'll always have to go in and help guide it, but it'll help you give you a jump start for anyone who gets deeper into it. And then you can actually say, actually, I understand that you did all this stuff, but I don't know like what these args are. I don't know what these if else statements mean. Can you explain the code line by line in bullets? So here's an example of the explanation. So it tells you line by line of your Python code of what you need to be doing and going from there. So, and you can ask it again for more general questions and we'll go through line by line. But yeah, that was just a quick example. I know we're out of time. Next class is going to be all coding. I thought we would have more time to go into breakout rooms today, but next class we're going to start off straight into coding. We're going to be going through text summarization, text extractions, text classifications, Q&A, how to create a chain of thought, and ideation. So we'll be creating breakout rooms right from the start. Make sure you can try to load this into your environment that you're using, either through Visual Code or through Google Colab. And we're going to breakout rooms, have everyone sort of walk through, do your own code, do your own changes. So then by next class, you can start thinking of an idea of how do you think you can use this LLM to do. So I want to thank everyone for showing up for today's class. I know we're over time by 7 minutes. And remember, we have the office hour on Wednesday for any questions regarding the coding. So thank
Luis,
you.
one question. So before next class, do you want like everyone to play with like this IntroGen AI, this file, play with it, get used to it, so that we get into the next one, or like we'll start with this file in the next class?
So we're going to start next class, I believe, on number 2 called text summarization. So I just want everyone just to try this one out yourself. I'll be going through this at the start of the class tomorrow, on next class on next Saturday, doing line by line. But then I want the team, then I'll have the team sort of go into two different block groups and go through each of the notebooks together. And then I'll be asking them to modify different parts of the code and the different groups to get a better response. So sort of be working together how to modify the notebooks.
Sounds good. So notebook 1 and notebook 1, we already went through.
Yes.
People
So
have to play with
notebook 2,
it. Notebook 2, go through it. That's where we start next week.
Yeah. So everyone just go through notebook 2. That's it. And then 3, 4, and 5, 6, and 7 will be going through the class next Saturday.
Hey, Luis, can you quickly show the collab ones if you don't mind?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I'll just make sure anyone who has VS Code and welcome for the class here. So thank you for joining, and you're able to drop off now if you need to go. So I'll be going through Google Colab at this moment.
It shouldn't take long, right? I think you're just loading it up and then you're like, yeah.
Yeah. I don't have it loading up right now. If anyone has it loaded up on their computer.
Yes, I have it.
I have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe someone can share their screen while this is happening. I'll load it from my side as well. But
you want to see this?
yes. We have Google Colab.
Yeah, I have the collab. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So press the secrets on the left side of the keyboard, but don't. Yeah. So it won't
I
show
do
it.
have it. I do have
Perfect.
it.
So this is where the Gemini API key needs to be put in. So remember from the AI Studio, you can get the key. Make sure you're putting in as your value, and you have the name there.
All right.
So if you click on the notebook there.
How do you confirm if the key is working correctly? Is there a way to test
Yeah,
it?
when you run your notebook and you get an error connect, that's when you know
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
copy it properly. So let's go open up text summarization 2, which everyone's going to be working on themselves there. So you double click on that. Okay, so it's not loading in that way.
Exactly. It's not loading in the code kind of a thing where you can execute cells by cells the way you're doing it. That's the reason that confused me actually.
Yeah, text summarization, I saw that issue, but if you go to like the
anything,
notebook one.
For all the notebooks, I have the same issue. I have the same issue.
Exactly. I have the same issue on all of them.
Okay. So for that one, you just have to import it as a notebook. So let's say you have this one saved on your computer, right? So file, upload notebook.
Yeah, Luis, I mean, you said that you haven't set up your Colab environment.
Yeah.
I mean, is it possible for you to walk through that yourself? That way.
Okay, I figured out actually. So this is the problem then. Actually, I did it in a prompt kind of a thing here, right? Probably I shouldn't do that. I should just import the notebook via the Git, which will come in the format that it understands actually. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, let's see.
I did it from here actually, like this, right? Get whatever it is, correct?
Yeah,
I shouldn't do that. I should do it as a file. Upload notebooks or whatever. Then you have the GitHub. Just give the GitHub URL here. Then you will see exactly what you're saying in VS Code. Similar to.
Yeah. So let me just.
Satya, why don't you do it? And it shouldn't take a long time.
Do you have the?
No, I mean, let Louis. I think Louis is setting it up. Let him. I mean, let's see what it does.
Okay. So for those who are just joining from this side, so I'm gonna do things. I have my I haven't put my secrets in, so let me just double check. So example, if I click on the GitHub that he was saying before, you don't have, if people, those who are confused with even Git, as long as you go to the main site here, make sure everyone has this in the link for those who are just joining and who haven't gone through the prerequisites. You can just click on the link here and it'll bring you to this folder that's on GitHub, right? So inside here are Foundation notebooks. So example, we're gonna be working on number 2. Once you have this notebook here as well, it'll tell you what all the different things you need to go to. All you have to do is click download, and I'll download the file from this side. Once you're in Google Colab, so example, I put upload notebook, and you can click on your upload. You can browse the file from your drive. It's able to upload it in a play-by-play area that way. So let me see if I have this here. I think it's there. Okay. So all you have to do again is when you go through here, we're not doing Vertex AI, so make sure you don't click on that one and reload it. So it's connecting me to the first database.
So you don't need to import any of the libraries here, pandas and everything. It's default available.
Yeah, so it should be all that's inside Google Colab. So this is what makes it a little bit more easier for everyone. For those who are sort of new beginners, you don't have to install pandas or anything. All that should be in there. So yeah, so my problem is the Gemini IP. So again, this is where I think this is where I'm getting that part out. So let me just.
So Louis, so what you are suggesting here is an alternative from what's in the reference document. You don't have to like clone or mount the Google Drive. You can just import it directly from your desktop. Is that the case?
That's never the way. You can import it. You can get clone it. Well, just to download all of them on your Google Drive, so you can always have it as on your Google Drive, so you don't have to go and download it each time on your computer.
Louis, maybe you need to enable the notebook access.
Yes.
That might work.
Okay, let me just get this one.
I also get the same error. That is the reason I was asking how to validate if the API key is working correctly.
Okay. So let me make sure sometimes. So let me just pause my screen because I might be showing my API here. So let me just grab it to get my API key. Does everyone have the same issue, or has anyone else been able to successfully input the Gemini API key in there? Sure.
So Satya, how did you copy those things yourself? Did you do a map Google Drive, or what did you do? Or clone the
No. Download, go to Git, download.
No, he's
and
asking
upload.
what I did actually. Just wait, right?
Oh.
Essentially, you know, like you just do and file upload and then Git and then choose just give the Git URL, right? And then it'll show it, and then you can just open up that particular thing. I think what Louis says makes sense actually, because like use the Google Drive so that you're not doing it every time, because this is not an session that you can share and come back. Sorry, not share, save and come back kind of thing. So the moment you lose the session, that's it, you're done. You have to start all over again. It's better that you store it in the Google Drive so that you can load that py file, notebook, and then just open it and then start executing, changing, and all of that stuff. I don't know about the saving and all of that stuff. Like as in, like say for example, if I modify a part of the code, would it save it back to my Google Drive as an changed file? I'm not certain of it, but yeah.
Right. What I'm wondering is, I mean, I mapped my Google Drive. I'm wondering how to clone Git
inside your Google Drive. It's in the prerequisites. file.
I saw. Okay,
All
okay.
the way
Maybe
all the way in the bottom.
I saw that, but okay, okay. So it says navigate to drive directory. So here you say navigate to drive directory, etc., and git clone command. Where are you running that, Luis? Is it you're running it in Colab?
Yeah, so example would be example on Colab. All you do is create a new notebook,
Uh,
in Drive.
oh, are you showing? Okay, whose
Am I
screen
showing
are
my
you
screen?
seeing here? Okay, it's your screen. Okay.
So example for here.
Yeah.
So you mount your drive, right?
Yeah.
Once your drive is already mounted,
Navigate to I navigate to the drive. Yep.
navigate to the drive. You put this actually in there, and then you run this code as well.
So right, where do I put the code in that code section there?
Yeah, yep, in there.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
You just put it in there.
When we put there, that is when the notebooks were running. We did the same. Myself and Satya, I think we did the same, and we had an issue of git clone. If you do that way, it's not running. It's not the notebooks are not in a runnable state.
Yeah, maybe because you may have not put your GitHub token in that way. Because sometimes well, to check if the GitHub is public, it should be able to pull it. But with
I just did it now. I was able to pull it, but then still I have the same issue, which is I can't run it because of that API key. It's not able to get that API key.
Okay, let me just pull this from here on this side. Okay, 1 second. I have to stop my. Reconnect. So this might be because this is made for more of. This is more for visuals. This is more for your runtime.
Oh, I think I may have got it. Let me see, like if this is a issue. Oh no, crap. There's something called notebooks access. I don't know if there is something to do with the access that it is not able to get the environment keys.
Actually, I'm able to get it. You have to add after adding that secret key, right? Just add API key equal to os.get environment. Let me share my screen. I don't know whether it is helpful.
I think this would be the next code here.
Oh, inline.
So are you able to share my see my screen?
No.
We are seeing your Word document.
Okay. Let me know when you're able to see my screen.
Yep.
So this is the one, right? So I'm just using, like, after setting this key, I'm adding this one. And when I'm able to run this one, I'm able to get this key.
No, we wanted to execute the.
Yeah. After doing this one, right?
Uh-huh.
So you add here.
Actually, no, existing code works actually. I found one problem.
Yeah, if you add it, so I'm able to get this one.
Nice.
Actually, for me, the existing code without changes worked. One thing was there is a radio button in the secret. Give access to notebook. Yeah.
Enable it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe I'll share this example as well, because I feel like for those who are actually having issues, I was able to figure it out by adding these extra lines here called user.get. So if you add in before you run it this line and a code before, if you're still having issues, you'll get your API key that way. Remove that line that was here before. This one is here because now we already called it before, so we just uncomment it out. Run that, run your generation model, and you're able to run the whole notebook now. Should be working. Yeah.
Actually, Luis, I'm getting that it says chat session is not defined. We are
Luis, if you don't mind, can you go through the steps again?
Yeah, so for those who are doing it, so again, make sure that when you open this notebook, we're using text summarization number 2 for those who are getting into it. So again, this is the notebook that we're running in. So make sure, first of all, we're all there. Second is make sure you run to this line, import Python, make sure it's all good in there.
So Luis, sorry again. I mean, when I double click on in the file section, I double click on the notebook. It's opening it in the text window on the right, not in the code window. So what was it again? I looks like I missed that step again.
Yeah. So remember I put in the chat that if you're having issues with that way, you can go to this. You can go to the link I put in there for GitHub and just download it.
Right. I mean that I work around understand, but I mean I already mapped Google Drive. I was wondering how to invoke from the Google Drive.
So from the Google Drive, it won't. You can't. When you double click on it, it's going to open up as Python, as a Python code, and not.
Oh, right. That's what happened.
Yeah. So when you do that, you just have to you have to click Open Notebook and find the Open Notebook in your drive and find it there, and you double click on it that way.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it. Thanks.
Because you double click it won't do it, but try the Open Notebook and it will open that way.
Got it. Okay.
Once you're in there, all I did to the original code is added this extra line, which I put in the chat above this. I'll share this with the group, everyone, again, for those who are running Google Colab, because they'll need to do this to every notebook. So maybe what I'll do is to make it easier for everyone, I may adjust every single notebook and copy it, duplicate it, and tell them to do this for Google Colabs. But I don't know, like, or if we just give this instruction, I'll talk to Srinivas afterwards, like what would be the best way. But you just do this. Once you add it, obviously you have to have your secrets in here already and make sure it's notebook access enabled.
What is HF token?
That's my Hugging Face token, but you don't need that. Yeah, it's not accessed here.
Oh, okay.
So you just need your Gemini API key here. Make sure you add that one line in there. Hashtag this part out, and then you should be able to get to go.
Luis, do you mind pasting it in the chat now, since most of us here? We'll try quickly.
He already pasted.
Already there?
Oh, sorry, my bad. Let's do that.
I could see like it worked for me, but if I use like the VSF class notebook prompting, that one I downloaded and using, but it is compiling for the chart session, it couldn't find. So it passed that stage, but it got stuck at the next one because it couldn't find chart session, not defined.
Which notebook are you looking into now?
Let me share my the first one, VSF class notebook prompting. The first
Oh
one.
yeah, so that's one I made for that one you have to add, like, remember if I saw on this one, I added in what's missing. So that was because I didn't put that in there. So for those,
okay.
I'll put that in the chat group. So if you want to make sure what's running, if you want to run, you would have to put that in there to make it work.
Got it. Okay, let me try.
Luis, would you be modifying the repository so everybody will get that maybe?
Yeah, I can modify the repository for that. I can update them.
Thank you.
Let's go back to Google Colab. So everyone is okay with the part I showed? Just
yeah, it worked for me.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it worked for me as well.
It worked now. Everyone has the. So what I like about Google Colab, obviously you have to adjust the code because you're not importing from the OS because it's not in the OS. It's in their Google thing in there. So sorry about that, guys. I thought it would be the same, but Google sometimes is very picky on. You have to import it from their user data.
So it's your own file kind of a thing, right?
Yeah,
sure.
But everything should work, and I just ran everything right now.
For some reason, it doesn't work for me still. Even though I copied your code and that ran through fine. That still went through fine.
Do you mind sharing your screen quickly, and that way I can walk you through?
Yeah, maybe done better. I don't know, but let me share.
I can just stay on for 5 more minutes, but just remember I have the office hour Wednesdays for 1 hour to go help you through some issues.
You need to comment that line 5 in that
Line
block.
5 needs to be commented.
Yeah, line 5.
You can delete it or comment it out. Yeah.
That's it.
And then rerun line 6 again. Or should be.
There you go.
Okay. Why are we commenting? Just curious, because this is the API key I'm using anyway.
The block above is, we are already getting that, right? You're doing that in the above block.
Oh, I see. Instead of this, we are adding the sub to.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Just make sure it runs and make sure it runs on line 6, but yeah, that should be it. Okay, guys. I have office hours this Wednesday, so again, I'll try to modify all the notebooks right now to I'll call it like a folder called like Google Colab folder. And then do the adjustment at the top of each notebook so everyone can just run it there. But again, I want the homework for everyone to do is to run that text summarization number 2 for next week. I'll be going through it in class, and then we'll be going to different breakout rooms, doing the other notebooks at that time. I'll be asking people to adjust things and in groups and see what happens. Okay. All right.
Awesome. Thank you,
Thank you,
Louis.
Louis.
Thanks
All
a lot.
right, thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.